guys, welcome to Film Learnin, the show dedicated to learning you some filmmaking and learning good. Well, I asked you a couple of episodes back if you wanted me to show you how to make an 8-bit character and animate them. So guess what? We're gonna do it today. A big thanks to my buddy Mike from Frudenberg Films. He suggested using this animation technique to me, so I give credit where credit is due. You can check out his channel here. In fact, he'll be guest hosting a future episode, so stay tuned. I've decided to go with a River City Ransom style character, so I'll be using this sprite sheet here as my reference. If you decide you want to go in a different style, it's as easy as going to the sprites resource, picking a game, and downloading the sheet, and you'll use the exact same technique. It's totally universal. Now, in order to complete this effect, we need a couple of things. 1. The sprite sheet of your choice. 2. A couple of reference photos, one facing the front and one to the side, and 3. A copy of Photoshop. Now, there's only one thing left to say.
Shall we begin?
Exactly. So here we are in Photoshop, guys. That feels weird to say. I've got our sprite sheet for Alex from River City Ransom, or Street Gangs as I knew it, opened up and ready to go. First off, let's grab the zoom tool and zoom into that first pose here until we can see the individual pixels. We'll then head down to the bottom left and add a new layer. Next, grab the pencil tool, set it to 1 pixel, and make sure that opacity is set to 100%. You can then hit I on the keyboard to bring up the eyedropper, and then we'll grab the black color first. We're also going to click here and turn down the opacity settings so we can see what we're actually drawing. You can turn this on and off as you use the eyedropper tool to grab the colors. Grab the pencil again and we'll begin tracing around the picture in all the spots that the black is shown. Once I get to the head though, I'm going to put my own little spin on it, giving him, my head. Basically, the idea is to trace what you need to and then add individual bits to make it your own. You'll only need a couple of subtle changes to do that. So as you can see, I now have a Grant looking sprite. In real time, that only took about 7 to 8 minutes. From there, we've just got to repeat this process for all the other poses you want. I know there's a bunch of them on this sprite sheet, so just pick the moves you think you'll need. Or if you have the time, do them all. It's up to you guys. Once you're done, you might think, man, these sprites are super small. They're gonna look like crap if we scale them up. And you know what? You'd be right. That's why we use this trick. Head up here to Image and click Image Size. We'll then click the drop down menu and type in 1920. You can go higher if you want. We'll then head to this drop down menu here and select Nearest Neighbor, and then click OK. As you can see now, it's scaled up our sprites without losing any clarity. Awesome, huh? Save your image as a PNG or a PSD file and we're ready for the next step. Alright, we have all of our sprite frames drawn. To After Effects! Now that we're in After Effects, import your image and we'll set up a new comp in Full HD. I'm naming it Grand. Drop your sprite sheet in and position the first sprite in the center. Next, head up and grab the rectangle tool. We'll draw a mask around our first sprite, isolating him. Scrub forward say 5 frames, yeah, that's enough. Hit Ctrl-Shift-D and delete the excess. Time for a little speed action, as we have to repeat this process for every sprite drawn, positioning them on the top of the last, and then staggering the layer on the timeline so that they represent a different space in the comp. Once it's done, it should look like this. Pretty cool, eh? Now that we have all of our sprites lined up in a comp, time to animate this thing! Just like with our sprite animation a few episodes back, we'll be separating our animation cycles into separate comps. In my case, it's a walk cycle, a punch cycle, and an uppercut. If you have more cycles, just set them up the same way as shown here. Let's now duplicate our grand comp and rename it walk cycle. Open it up and our first step will be to delete all of the frames not associated with the walk. Essentially, we should be left with just these 2 frames and our standing pose. From there, select them all and we'll trim them all back to last only 3 frames. Next, select the 2 walking poses and we're going to duplicate the hell out of them, filling out the comp for about 2 seconds. We'll also stagger them with each duplication. From there, duplicate the standing pose and then drag it down to the end of the comp and stretch it out for a few seconds. We'll then head along to say the 3-second mark, hitting N on the keyboard, adding a temporary N marker on our comp. Our last step then is to head up to composition and select trim comp to work area, making our marker now permanent. That's our walk cycle done. Now, onto the punch cycle. For this cycle, let's once again duplicate the grand comp, name it punch, and like the last, delete every frame not associated with the punch, save for our standing pose. Because the punch is animated a bit faster, we'll select all our poses and trim them down to 2 frames this time. Line up the 4 frames of our punch animation, and then duplicate them just like the walk cycle, staggering them one by one for around about 2 seconds. When you're done, you should have something like this, a nice fluid punch animation. Grab our standing pose and do the same stretch out at the end. Hit N, head up and trim that comp to our work area, and let's move on. Our last animation is our finishing move, the old uppercut. By now you know the drill. Duplicate the grand comp, name it uppercut, and proceed to delete all frames not associated with the uppercut, except for our stalwart standing pose. You might be thinking our original comp was a waste of time because we aren't using it for animation, but lining up all of your frames before you begin these comps is a huge time saver. While I was talking, I've trimmed all of the poses down to 2 frames and staggered them. The only difference this time is that on the final uppercut frame, I'll be extending it out to around 3 frames, just to give it a bit more emphasis. We'll then grab that standing pose and stretch it out for a few more seconds, once again jumping up and trimming that comp to our work area. Remember, you can use this same technique for any sprite animations you have. Just play with the amount of frames and see what works for your individual cycle. Now that our cycles are done, let's bang them all together. Let's open a new comp and give it a time of say 10 seconds, and we'll call it Animate. I've already got a background all set up and ready to go, so let's drop it into our comp. As you can see, it's not quite big enough, so we'll scale it up. That's better. Now, to have our character walk across the screen, let's drop in our walk cycle, position him into place, hit the stopwatch, scrub along the timeline, and then reposition him. You now have a character walking across the screen. How easy was that? I've set up a bad guy named Clyde with the exact same animation cycles. So I'll drop him in and have him walk towards 8-bit me. Now for the fun part. We'll grab our punch cycle, hold shift, and drop it at the end of our walk cycle, and then reposition him. Scrub through a few punches and then hit Ctrl-Shift-D to cut the excess. You can also cut a few frames from the front if you need to. We'll then grab the Clyde beaten up comp and do the exact same thing. Let's check out a preview. Getting there. Last step, adding our uppercut and knockout. Follow the same step as our punch cycle, holding shift, dropping it at the end of our last animation, and then reposition it into place. We'll then add our Clyde knockout cycle and do the same. Okay, this is the last step. Once our knockout occurs, we'll add the bouncing coin in the project file download after Clyde hits the ground. We'll then hit the stopwatch on position and animate its position up and down to simulate it bouncing. And that's it. I've also included the font used in the game and a pre-comp with the power bar and a few choice phrases, including the classic BARF. Add up all those steps and you'll get something like this. So that's turning yourself into an NES style 8-bit sprite. Sure, drawing all those poses is a bit time consuming, but the upside is when you see yourself being able to animate yourself doing all these cool things, like punching people in the face until I yell BARF. Guys, hit that subscribe button if you're new, don't forget to like it, share it, to every person you know. Oh, and come back next week when I show you how to do this. Hey guys, in case you haven't been on the Facebook page, you'll know that I've been on vacation this week, and the hotel Wi-Fi sucked balls. This is why the episode's late. So unfortunately, I don't have a preview for this week's episode because I just got back, but I do have a photo of myself dressed as Mario being arrested by my buddy dressed as a Walking Dead sheriff. So, that's pretty cool, eh? Oh, and Mario boobs. Oh, and keep learning!